you said it, and I completely agree, especially when this began in the 80s and the 90s, but still to a certain degree today, brand value has this kind of ephemeral, like, oh, well, it's the heart and it's the emotion, but it's awareness, and how much is that logo making whenever mergers and acquisitions come up, all of a sudden, everybody's super able to put this value on a brand. I remember, this is a little now old of an example, but when Disney acquired Marvel, the Avengers brand at that point was such a premium thing that altered the conversation. It wasn't just, we want your portfolio, this is great. You had this brand that had such a cachet, especially at the time of the acquisition, that it kind of changed the conversation. So why is it often considered ephemeral until the M&A, and then why is it so easy for everybody's mind to shift?
Yeah. Well, thank heavens, at least there's a moment in time
Yes.
when brand value at least has to matter, right? It's a shame that it takes that, and so I think that's what we just disagree with, right? Like, it shouldn't, like, just conceptually, right? Like,
your health matters when the doctor tells you something's wrong.
Yeah,
right. Not great.
You kind of take it, for granted otherwise, right? Again, to your point, you're exactly right, and I think it goes. I'm gonna have to drop some accounting here because ultimately everything's about accounting, and that is that. It comes to the fore with M&A because if you think about it, you've got a buyer and a seller, right? Or partner, if you will, if it's a JV. But mergers and acquisitions, there's always somebody that's slightly more equal than somebody else, right?
There's somebody who's a little more of a partner than the other. Yeah.
And so ultimately, the buyer wants to not pay quite as much, but wants the security, wants to know that they're buying something of value.
Yep.
The seller, of course, is thinking like, hey, I've got something of value, you should pay more. But ultimately, they're both looking after the same thing when it comes to a brand. The seller feels like, hey, I've developed this brand. I've created a brand that helps drive the kind of behavior that helps my company be successful and ultimately a target. The buyer says, well, if I buy you, I want to be assured that it's a good buy and I'm going to get my value out of it, arguably beyond the price that I'm willing to pay, right? So those are all important things. But, the accounting aspect is really the value of an enterprise, okay? So here's the accounting.
Glad you said that.
Right? The enterprise value, as we all largely know, is pretty much market cap, right? For publicly traded companies. Let's use that. That's the easiest example. Plus, what they say is plus net debt. Okay, so it's that cash on hand versus how much you own. Okay, and that can be small, it can be large, it depends, but it's largely market cap. But the fact of the matter is that usually dwarfs the actual book value of a firm, right? So if you think about the old assets equals liabilities and equity, right? Like your property, plant, and equipment, and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So there's this huge part. So let's say if this is enterprise value, this is my best slide creation, right, on a podcast. If you're thinking about this much and this much is book value, what is this part? Well, this is the premium that somebody is willing to pay you for that price. Guess what's in there? It's patents, it's brand, it's other IP. It could be employee knowledge. It could be longtime customers. It's all these things that have been built up over years, and that's what we're trying to explain, right? And so ultimately, back to the point of M&A, we're helping to explain the full price of it. So that's why all of a sudden brand is important, because everybody wants to know the value of what they're getting, right? Because then, depending on that, the acquirer will choose to do whatever the acquirer wants to do with the brand and after an M&A, whether they keep the brand under their umbrella or within their portfolio, whether they sunset the brand, whether they combine it, spin it off, like we've seen here recently. So there are a lot of things that can go on, but at least initially you have to understand that brand is part of that market premium, and that's a very valid aspect of any enterprise, valuation. So M&A again brings to light, spotlights, shines whatever on that moment. And that's why I think everybody conceptually, intuitively gets it. It's kind of a shame because that value has existed 2 days before, or 2 weeks before, or 2 years before, or was being built before that moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's just nobody really wanted to talk about it at that time. Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I am just like literally over the moon that you brought up that it is like the enterprise, it is the business in motion that is your brand. We were just talking to a guest about agency relationships maybe a month or two ago, Bruno Graupois, one of my buddies, and he was like, a long-term relationship is great, but if the talent is turning over in that agency, do you really have a long-term relationship with the agency, or do you have a long-term relationship with the logo? And I think a lot of people are like looking at like the golden arches or the apple with a bite out of it, and they're like, well, what's the value of that?
Yeah.
And that's logo value.
Yeah.
Brand value is actually what is the institutional knowledge, what is the operation. And and you know what? I think that is such an amazing way for a brand, forget M&A, like check within yourself and see where that value is coming from. I think a lot of brands themselves probably couldn't tell you off the top of their heads, oh, like put this in order. Do you think your operational architecture, your company culture, your leadership, or your institutional knowledge is the most valuable thing of that? What? But my goodness, wouldn't that be incredibly helpful for you to know in any situation?
You've just stolen half my talking points for the rest of the podcast.